So as many are aware, the Deepwater Horizon event caused a lot of the communities along the Gulf Coast to have to switch either their careers or alter their their way of life in different ways. And one community that was particularly affected was the commercial fishing community along the Gulf Coast. So my project will be looking at and trying to understand how the spatial closures that were put in place during the Deepwater Horizon event affected the distribution of fishing, of commercial fishing within the Gulf of Mexico. It's important to understand how the fishing communities were affected, both socioeconomically, but also in turn to also understand how the biology of the population dynamics of the fish were affected for several reasons. One, so a lot of the data that the National Marine Fisheries Service collects and uses as direct inputs to stock assessments is collected from the fishing industry. So, and that data is directly used to tune the abundance trends within different stock assessment models. As a result, it's important for us as scientists to understand if there have been changes to fishing patterns or fishing behaviors so that we can understand if we see changes in trends over time, whether they are truly due to changes in abundance within the system in the Gulf of Mexico, or if they're changes due to an anomaly such as a change in fisher behavior. And with respect to Deepwater Horizon, with the spatial closures that were in place, we need to understand what happened to all of the fishing effort that typically would take place within those spatially closed areas, and to know whether that effort was moved elsewhere, whether some of those folks actually left the fishery, either temporarily or permanently, or if some folks actually use their vessels as part of the cleanup effort and were able to sort of generate some income in that way. So to address these issues, I'm building on an agent-based model that I developed several years ago as a grad student and was funded by NOAA and Sea Grant. And I'll be building that model. Initially just represented the reef fish fisheries off of the west coast of Florida. And with the GoMRI funds that I was recently awarded, that model will be expanded out to encompass the entire Gulf of Mexico, as well as include several additional reef fish species, some shrimp species, as well as some other pelagic fish species, and will be used to look at and try and address this question of how fishing effort has been redistributed, was redistributed during the Deepwater Horizon event. In addition, we're also trying to understand if the changes that the Deepwater Horizon event brought with the spatial closures in the Gulf of Mexico, if fisher behaviors changes in response to that have actually stuck more permanently, and if fishers have changed the way that they're actually operating and doing business as a result of Deepwater Horizon. Our team is hoping to learn and better understand, as I mentioned, how spatial fishing effort and temporal fishing effort may have changed, and how the fishing industry may have adopted to sort of this new normal situation with the Gulf of Mexico. And in particular, I'm interested in understanding how the data that might be collected from the fishing industry may have been affected by the spatial closures, and to try and find ways to sort of account for that in the stock assessments when the data is incorporated into the stock assessment.